my talk. Here we go. How he said he living life as a gringo. Where you question where you fit in every time you mingle. They say you do this with not enough that. My rapping is really bad. This life as a gringo.
Yes, hello, and welcome to another episode of Life as a Gringo. I am Dramos, of course, and it is Thursday, so it means it's time for our Thursday Trends episode. Hope everybody I hope you had a 3-day weekend. That's what I was doing. Apologies, I didn't say it ahead of time. It always slips my mind. But I took off for the 3-day weekend. That's why we didn't have an episode on Tuesday. But we're back. I hope everybody, if you got off, you enjoyed the extra day, much needed, with all that's going on in the world right now. I'm also shocked at how Veterans Day is like not a given holiday where everybody has off. I recognize that this week, it was on, I guess, Monday, where it was like half off, but like people were still expecting to do. It was just like not a real federal holiday for some reason. It felt like, which it should be. So big thank you to all our veterans, those of you who have sacrificed to help defend this country and all that comes along with that. We thank you for your service. Now, with that said, I was hoping I wouldn't have to utter this man's name again or like have to consistently talk about it, but here we are. Let's talk about Donald Trump. It's been a busy week or so since the election. Almost 2 weeks at this point. It's crazy. Going on 2 weeks. He's begun to announce his members for his cabinet and his staff, his team, and it's as much, if not more, of a shit show than we could have ever imagined. So we'll talk a bit about that. We'll also touch on an update from comedian Tony Hinchcliffe, Kill Tony, the guy who made all those Puerto Rico, or made the Puerto Rico joke. We'll touch on if he has any remorse after he talked about it recently. And then we'll touch on the controversy surrounding this new Karol G song. I'm not sure if you've been following this on the internet, but there was a big uproar about one of the lines in there, so we'll talk about that. And then on the hit this segment, some good news. We will talk about Latino reps, people who won on the down ballots in this election, who will be heading to D.C. in 2025, so something to celebrate. But first and foremost, as we always do, let's get into the nonsense, the BS, in a segment called For the People in the Back.
Say it louder for the people in the back. Say it louder for the people in the back.
All right, so starting with Trump and his cabinet, and you know something I was stewing on this morning, I just want to let it out there. I feel like the United States gaslighted us into thinking they were somebody that they weren't. And reality is, the U.S. is just the fuckboy that we thought they were. That's what this election proved. I really, really do think that. I think this election confirmed all of our worst fears. I think coming off of 2020, all that happened with COVID and George Floyd and all the activism we thought we were seeing, the change we thought we were seeing, I think this election proved that was just a performative effort by the people in power, by majority of the people in this country. And this election, we came right back to the country we knew we were, but wanted to sort of turn a blind eye to, right? And we've all had that situationship where somebody's actions continue to show us who they are, but we keep making excuses for them. We keep wanting to see the good in them. We keep thinking they could change. We could change them. And time and time again, they prove to us, no, this is just who they are. They've made that choice. This is an active decision. And I think the United States has shown us that. The United States has shown us that we are a racist country, or one that turns a blind eye to racism. We are one that favors misogyny. We are one that favors corrupt, both in the literal sense as far as their practices, but also just morally corrupt, particularly white male individuals. That's who we favor in this country. The ideals of again, the misogynistic nature of these white men in charge, being able to speak as they wish without any sort of consideration for how it may make others feel. And again, the narrative that was, instilled in this country from its beginning, the idea that the white man is at the top of the food chain and unfortunately seems like will always be. And that's how Americans, like it best. That's how Americans want to live their lives, with the, white man, top of the food chain, spewing their nonsense, their hate, their just disregard for anybody who doesn't look like them. And that's who we are as a country. And it's sad, but it's the reality of the United States of America. And not saying that we can't change that, not saying it can't be, we can't progress, but unfortunately, this is where people feel comfortable in this country. They feel most comfortable when there is this sort of toxic ideology in the air and dominating the common narrative. And yeah, it's a heterosexual white man's world, and the rest of us are just living in it. That's what this election, I think, proved to me and I think a lot of people. Now, piggybacking off of that, Donald Trump, president-elect, has begun to announce members of his staff for 2025, or however long they last in his 4-year term. A couple, I wouldn't say shockers, but a couple ones that were just like, oh man, this is going to be interesting. One of them was Representative Matt Gaetz. Donald Trump has picked him as his choice for Attorney General. Now, if you're wondering who Matt Gaetz is, he is the Florida Republican who actually has an ongoing House Ethics Committee investigation because of allegations that he engaged in sexual misconduct and illicit drug use. There's actually credible allegations about him paying for sex, and actually allegedly that sex worker being underage. And he had a investigation going on into those allegations, and now he has abruptly resigned from Congress yesterday. And there's a lot of questions about the timing of it, because as a report here in MSNBC talks about, they say the timing of his resignation could prove to be quite convenient for the scandal-plagued congressman. Punchbowl reported Wednesday, citing multiple sources familiar with the Ethics Committee's Gaetz investigation, that the panel was set to vote this week on whether to release the Punchbowl sources described as a, quote, highly damaging report. Now, the Washington Post confirmed Punchbowl's reporting, citing 4 people familiar with the matter, independently confirmed this report. They're saying with Gaetz out of Congress, the Ethics Committee loses its jurisdiction to investigate the allegations. It's unclear whether the report could still be released. A source familiar with the situation told NBC News that if the committee were to vote Thursday, a protocol would allow the report to be released Friday. Spokesperson for the committee declined to comment on whether the panel was set to release the report. Politics as usual, baby. You have a opportunity to expose this man for who he is, and we're still not sure if we're going to do it or not. It's just, and this is only the beginning. Donald Trump's not even in office yet. We're just starting to get I'm starting to get the bullshit. I kind of was just like, you know what, whatever, man. I'm like heartbroken like anybody else, but it is what it is. I'm gonna keep it pushing. And even now, as I'm reading this, I'm like, oh, fuck, man. There's going to be a lot of bullshit to kind of sift through, get through, and tough pills to swallow like this one. I mean, this asshole as Attorney General is just, it's just fucking insane. Another insane one. Trump has tapped Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy to lead the new Department of Government Efficiency. Now, President-elect Donald Trump has tapped tech billionaire Elon Musk the world's wealthiest man and former Republican presidential contender Vivek Ramaswamy to lead a new government department called the Department of Government Efficiency that will work to slash federal government spending, waste, and regulations. Trump said the commission will, quote, provide advice and guidance from outside of government, partnering with the White House and Office of Management and Budget to, quote, drive large-scale structural reform throughout the federal government. He said the team's work will conclude no later than July 4th, 2026. Together, these two wonderful Americans, he said, together these two wonderful Americans will pave the way for my administration to dismantle government bureaucracy, slash excessive regulations, cut wasteful expenditures, and restructure federal agencies. Yeah, what could go wrong here? A tech billionaire, the world's richest man, someone who himself has proven to be morally corrupt and probably needs to be regulated even more heavily than he already has, a man who owns one of the most powerful social media platforms in the entire world, a man who allegedly has been in regular communication with Vladimir Putin of Russia, a man who allegedly had X adjust their algorithm so that his tweets, or whatever the fuck they're called now, would be, I think it was something like 1,000 to 1 in comparison to the average person. A person who was largely responsible for much of the misinformation that was spewed out there over the course of this election cycle. A man who spouted the lie about the attack on Nancy Pelosi's husband, claiming that the attacker was a scorned lover when that was just complete bullshit. He was a radical Republican. A man who helped fuel the disgusting rumor about Haitian immigrants in Springfield, which then Donald Trump repeated on a national televised debate. That man, Elon Musk, is going to be a close ally, co-worker of the U.S. government, telling them what regulations they should slash, what federal agencies they should restructure. What could go wrong? If I'm not mistaken, Elon Musk is under investigation for all types of things when it comes to SpaceX. This legitimately scares me. I saw a video where they compiled a sort of bunch of information on Elon Musk throughout this election cycle, and he's also been cited at Trump's Mar-a-Lago residence in Florida since the election. Like, he's been, tied at the hip with Donald Trump. And it's scary to think a person who is a ruthless tech billionaire who wants to do all kinds of crazy shit is going to have power in the U.S. government. Of all the things I've heard thus far, this scares me. Because as regular people, the government is supposed to protect us from people like Elon Musk, who, because of their money, platforms, and connections, are already far more powerful than is safe for the everyday person. But now you give them the ear of arguably the most powerful man in the world, in the United States president, and the possibilities for their fuckery are endless. Truthfully, of all the things, this is the one that scares me the most. And yeah, I don't know. I'm hoping I'm wrong. Maybe I've watched one too many TV shows or things like that. But even the FBI just raided, and I'm not going to dive super long to this one, but there was an app that apparently Elon Musk was allegedly using to track results for the election. And Joe Rogan was on his podcast and said that Elon somehow knew the results of the election hours before the rest of the world. That apparently they were at like some viewing party, and Elon was like, I already know Trump won. I'm going to leave. I've already seen the results. And the app in question that Elon was allegedly using, the owner and creator of that app was just raided by the FBI, and it seems to be connected to, I guess, how the fuck he had access to this information. So, a lot of question marks here. Anybody watches the morning show on Apple TV, Apple Plus? The last season surrounded basically somebody who was playing an Elon Musk type of character. And the questions around someone like him in the TV show, he was trying to buy the media platform. And the questions around the sort of, I don't know if safety would be the right word, but I guess it would be. The questions around what happens when these powerful people begin to own everything, essentially. What type of censorship happens? How do we hold them accountable if they're going to be burying negative stories about themselves that the public needs to know about? They, and spoiler alert, if you watched it, there was all types of like espionage happening because of the technology that this person that was basically like Elon Musk, the type of access that they had. And I mean, shit, we saw it with Jeff Bezos and him not allowing, what is it? Is it I think it's the Wall Street Journal. It's Washington Post or Wall Street Journal, one of the ones that he owns. I can't remember off the top of my head. One is owned by him, one is owned by Rupert Murdoch, Fox News. But Jeff Bezos not allowing the newspaper he owned to do their normal endorsement of a presidential candidate, which they've always done. And now as Trump gets into office, he's publicly talked about critiquing the media, how the media, he's sort of dabbled in the authoritarian conversations about trying to control the media, right? And finding ways, to take care of the fake news media, which is only fake news if it's a critique of him, right? Everything else is fine. And when you have, again, a man who owns one of the most powerful social media networks, who's now also the richest man in the world, who also promotes misinformation, it's a scary fucking combination, man. That's, I guess, what keeps me up at night to a degree, is misinformation and those things it's already a problem. It already sways elections. It already makes it harder for people to really understand what is going on. Now what happens? Where does this stop? Where does the power end? What happens now that the guardrails aren't really in place, where the government is no longer protecting us from these ruthless business people, but instead are favoring the ruthless business people over the everyday person? That's what keeps me up at night. And not to be a doomsdayist, I hope I'm absolutely wrong about all that I'm talking about. I hope that this is the greatest thing for the country, but these are the things I'm concerned with. Anyway, we'll move on from Donald Trump into some other stories we got going on here. But first, we will take a quick break, and then we'll be right back. All right, let's quickly touch on a Kill Tony update. The comedian Tony Hinchcliffe, the one who called Puerto Rico a floating island of garbage. He has now doubled down and said he's not going to apologize to anybody. He was at a comedy event doing a podcast of his. This was recorded apparently the day after the rally, and then it was just released this last Tuesday. But he says, quote, "I love Puerto Ricans. They're very smart people. They're smart. They're street smart. And they're smart enough to know when they're being used as political fodder." He then goes on to say, "And right now that is happening. And I apologize to absolutely nobody." I mean, not surprising. This is the type of person he's proven himself to be. I love the pandering that happens about, oh, Puerto Ricans are so smart. They know they're being used. No, you said a shitty comment in the wrong venue that plays into a lot of existing racism and false ideas that a lot of Americans have about people of color, and specifically in this case, Puerto Ricans. That's that. And I'd actually rather this, though, to be completely honest with you. Because I hate when people put out these like fake. I've seen the errors of my ways. I'm gonna take some time off and reflect and grow as a human being. Like, it's like, all right, we know that's bullshit. So you know what? I'd rather you just stand 10 toes down in your fucking fuckery and racism and just being a piece of garbage. That way, you know, I can notice, steer clear of you, and the public then doesn't have to play this game of like, oh, his retribution story, right? And he gets on 60 Minutes and talks about how he like, you know, went away to fucking monkhood for a month, and you know how it really changed his life and his perspective, and now he has a charity for Puerto Rico or some bullshit. Yeah, stand 10 toes down in your racism, whatever. And lastly, I want to touch on this new song. It's supposed to be basically like the fucking Colombian Avengers over here, right? It's called Plus 57. It's got Blessed on it. It's got Fade. It's got Karol G, Ryan Castro, J Balvin, Maluma. And Karol G is the one taking like the biggest heat for it. I guess it's mainly her song. But the song came into question for a controversial lyric. And I'm gonna read the lyric real quick. I'm moving around in this article from We Are Me Too. But Karol G basically sets up the line in question. The first line where people are, I guess it sets it up. She says, "She looks innocent, but those eyes lie. Sucking on a lollipop, hottie's got that vibe." Okay? Nothing crazy there. But then the song goes to a line that says, "Mamacita since she was 14." And that's where people felt like it went too far. The line was "Mamacita since she was 14." And that was a line. It was actually sung by Maluma and Fade. But it's this idea of the sexualization of young women is why people find it controversial. And I'm not gonna lie, my initial thing when I read it, I was kind of like, it's in poor taste and like definitely creepy, but like, is it really all that controversial? But then I kind of like thought about it a little bit deeper, and we do live in this really fucking weird, disgusting culture of like, the sexualization of young women, particularly Latin women, and the normalization of just like older, creepy guys, right? And like, I feel uncomfortable talking to like any woman under the age of 25. I'm like, and I'm not even that old, right? But that's still like, I'm like, anything younger than that, I'd feel strange. I've never been that dude. And I'm always like, I always look at people like Leonardo DiCaprio. He's like 50-something dating an 18-year-old, a newly 18-year-old, as if that makes it any better, but newly 18. I mean, as if that makes even, you know, any... 18 is 18, but watching her turn 18 and then hitting on her is even fucking like 10 times creepier than an already infinitely creepy amount, if that makes sense. But anyway, I'm always like, these guys have some sort of like mental trauma going on within them that like I don't even know what the fuck you talk to an 18-year-old about. You know what I mean? Like, I can't imagine traveling and being in like a room and sitting down to dinner trying to make conversation with an 18-year-old that I'm not like related to or mentoring. You know what I mean? Like on an adult, like, just weird. Anyway, but this is a real issue, unfortunately. And like I said, particularly in I feel like our culture when it comes to Latinas, and I've talked about the over-sexualization of Latinas in general. But this is an issue, and kind of as I read deeper in the article, I was like, yeah, I get it. I get wanting to hold these artists accountable for not continuing to perpetuate a narrative like this one, right? And there's a couple people, I guess, who addressed it. Now, I'm pulling from weareme2.com. They said, the Instituto Colombiano de Bienestar Familiar issued a statement condemning the controversial lyrics in Plus 57. In the statement, they called out the song for, quote, reinforcing the sexualization of children in our country. The organization, which focuses on protecting children and adolescents in vulnerable situations, criticized the musicians behind the song, stating it does not contribute to our fight against the commercial sexual exploitation of children and adolescents. They say that, according to Children Change Colombia, 200,000 children are sexually abused each year in Colombia, and more than 35,000 are involved in commercial sexual exploitation. These statistics underscore the problem of sexual exploitation of minors in Colombia, intensifying the discomfort and anger around the lyrics that sexualize a 14-year-old girl in Plus 57. And again, when you put it in that context, as much as it's kind of like, I wouldn't say a completely innocent line, but as much as it's like not crazy, it's like an explicit line. Yeah, I get it. And I think we probably should be doing better, right? I think, again, with that being such a strong issue as it is, and the idea of trafficking and all these things, why not hold our artists accountable a bit more and say, hey, like, you guys are the ones pushing the culture forward. Let's just try and be a little bit better, do a little bit better, be a little bit more mindful, And for that, I get it. Now, they have since changed the lyric, and Karol G has come out publicly saying, quote, none of the things said in the song have the meaning that they've been given, nor were sung under that perspective, but I hear you and I take responsibility, and I realize I still have a lot to learn. I feel very affected, and I'm sorry from the heart. And I think that kind of sums up pretty well the idea of it all, right? I don't think anybody was sitting in that studio like, hey, let's make a record about wanting to kick it with underage girls. But again, I think it's like what I talk about as a society, as a culture, and I'm like, I go back and forth from like the artist perspective of like, you're rapping and they're creating art and doing all these things, and like you don't want to be in the studio overthinking every little thing. But I do think holding ourselves to a higher standard, and even just outside of this, I've talked about that even with like a lot of true crime stuff, and I say that somebody who's a fan of it, right? I used to want to work in like forensics and criminal psychology, and I've always just had an interest and a fascination in true crime books and shows as a kid. But there is, I think, a line of glorification that happens where we are creating entertainment out of really dark moments, out of things that should not be viewed as anything less than just atrocities. And I think the more we normalize these things for entertainment, the more desensitized we become. And, I don't want to be, I don't want to kill the fun or whatever, but like, I think there is a real conversation. Why are we as human beings attracted to the worst parts of humanity, essentially? Why do we continue to validate them and empower them and at the very least find them to be entertaining? And I think that's a real question we have to ask ourselves. And again, I'm not saying it from this holier than thou perspective. I just like anybody else participate in things that, like I said, watching these programs or being entertained by them, being fascinated by them. I just like anybody else am a part of that problem as well. It's definitely like not something I definitely try to be more mindful of it these days, but I'd be lying if I didn't find it interesting. I'd be lying if I like said I didn't start watching the Zodiac thing on Netflix, like that it's just something I've been following since I was younger that I want to see more about. And it's dark stuff, and I'm sitting there eating dinner while people are talking about, their loved one being murdered. Somebody's literally sitting there crying on TV, talking about one of the darkest days of their entire life, and I'm sitting there, eating chicken. And in that context, it just sounds disgusting. Like I'm ashamed of myself, but like I'm just being honest here. I think we've all been there, right? But again, yeah, it's like this societal norm, and there's a lot of questions as to why we've normalized why we're so desensitized to these things. And I don't think it's necessarily wrong to try to hold people accountable or push them to be better. Now, again, there's a line there. It's not like, oh, we're canceling Karol G and Fade and Maluma. No, like, that's like, come on. Like, let's not get fucking stupid about this. They made a song, didn't really think much of it. Somebody pointed out how it could be perceived, and they reacted accordingly and, with empathy for anybody that could potentially have received it in a negative fashion, or how they could have potentially perpetuated a negative experience that is happening in the world. And that's all you could ever ask for. Right? So I think that's where I find comfort, I guess, in it, or where it makes sense to me. Now, with that said, we're done with the negative stuff, thank God. We're going to move on to some positive stuff, some Latinos who came out on Election Day and are representing for all of us. So we'll talk about that in our Mi Gente segment. Mi Gente. All right, well, we need some positivity, particularly surrounding the election results. So this is an article from wearemetoo.com, and they made a list of Latino reps heading to D.C., some who were reelected or elected for the first time. So I'm going to run down a list because there's some positive stuff happening here. Now, starting off here in California, you have Representative Nanette Barragán, representing California's 44th Congressional District. She had the most decisive win for her seat. I think she got 68.9% to her opponent's 31.3% of the votes. So big shout out to her for winning that one. In Florida, you had Representative Ana Paulina Luna, and she's actually a Republican representing Florida's 13th Congressional District. And in other wins there in Florida, you had Representative Darren Soto, Democrat, Florida's 9th District. Representative Mario Diaz-Balart, Republican, Florida's 27th District. Representative Maria Salazar, Republican, Florida's 27th District. And Carlos Jimenez, Representative, Florida's 28th District, also a Republican. Listen. I'm gonna stay positive here. Let's stay positive here. In Illinois, you had Representative Jesus Chuy Garcia, Democrat, winning the 4th District in Illinois. He's going to be the U.S. House of Representatives. In Illinois, you also had Representative Delia Ramirez, representing Illinois' 3rd District, Democrat. New Mexico, we had Gabriel Vasquez, representing the 2nd District. He is a Democrat, beat out a Republican challenger. So shout out to him. In New York, my girl, AOC, she won re-election for New York's 14th District. Other New York wins include Representative Nidia Velazquez of New York's 7th District, Democrat. Representative Adriano Espaillat, I definitely butchered that name, Democrat, New York's 13th District. And Representative Richie Torres, New York's 15th District. In Texas, and it's the last one, of course. Okay, there's a few other ones here. But Texas, Senator Ted Cruz, who apparently, I'm not going to do the thing that has been done to us all of our lives, where somebody questions your Latinness. Senator Ted Cruz, Republican Texas, sadly beat out challenger Colin Allred by 9 points to retain his senatorship, I guess you would say. Other wins in Texas include Representative Monica de la Cruz, Republican, Texas 15th District. Representative Veronica Escobar, Democrat, Texas's 16th District. Representative Joaquin Castro, Democrat, Texas 20th District. You had Rep. Henry Cuellar, Democrat, Texas's 28th District. Representative Sylvia Garcia, Democrat, Texas 29th District. Representative Vicente Gonzalez Jr., Democrat, Texas's 34th District. And Representative Gregorio Casar, Democrat, Texas's 35th district. A lot of Democrats, as I look at that, I mean, from that list or whatever, in Texas winning there. Texas is an interesting state. It's like it's still Republican, but it's up for grabs, and that's a gigantic state. Obviously, large Latin population. You also have a lot of people, I believe, from California moving to cities like Austin, which could be helping turn it blue, I guess, if you will. But yeah, we got to take the wins where we can, you know. This is a brutal fucking election cycle. I'm not gonna lie, y'all. I feel like I pre-recording today's show, before I sat down, I was in like my bubble. I was like bouncing around, like, you know what I mean? I had gotten some like a good email yesterday. I've been like, just, you know, I feel like I'm like on my shit a bit. I feel like I have a clear direction of what I want to do next, which is really nice. And then I sat down to record this episode, sort of reading all the information to you and talking to you about this. And I'm fucking bummed out a bit. I'm not going to lie to you. When I really think about the election, I truly am bummed out. And scared and nervous and angry and all the emotions that I'm sure many of you are feeling. Nervous, scared, you know, whatever, I'm feeling it all, you know. As much as I feel like I'm trying to avoid it. I feel like I have enough stress going on in my life that I have to focus on that, and everything else is secondary, including the election results. But when I stop and think about it, it's like, fuck us. But hey, sorry for the cursing. Now I'm just like, yeah. This is what's meant to happen, though. I think, listen, you can't. This is life's timing. It is what, like, for whatever reason, as dark as it might fucking get, and hopefully it doesn't. This is what is supposed to happen. This is where we are. So, yeah, that's all I can say on that. I wish I had more words of reassurance and encouragement. I'm just like, hey, wait and see, and I'd rather just like cry later than cry before I have to, I guess, is what my thought process right now. With that said, let's tie everything we talked about today in a neat little bow in a segment we call Conclusion Stew.
Time for Conclusion Stew.
All right, y'all. I am emotionally drained. Trump be trumping. Trump is trumping before even getting in office. And like, you know how like you like when you get out of a situation, like you begin to look at it almost through like rose-colored glasses, or like you don't remember the rawness of the emotion, right? Because you've had some time away from it, and like you remember it, but it doesn't feel the same, right? And then you go back to, like, have you ever been in like a fucked up situationship or like a job that you leave and you go back, and then you go back and you're like, oh, this is exactly why I fucking left. Or like you're on vacation for a little while and then you go back to the office and you're like, man, yep, back to that bullshit. That's what it feels like now as like the Trump stuff begins to get unveiled. It's like, oh yes, this is why 2016 to 2020 felt so heavy to pay attention to the media and news cycle, because of all the bullshit that was happening around this man and hearing his press conferences and all the controversies and the idiots around him. This was why I was so relieved in 2020 when Joe Biden won, and now we're back to the bullshit. Yeah, but that's where we are. And listen, we survived last time. Fingers crossed, we do it again. We survive again, and yeah, hopefully there's some lessons learned here. We shall see. Tony Hinchcliffe, kill Tony, fucking loser. That's all I could sum it up as. Again, happy that you're not putting on some fake fucking apology tour and you're just keeping it a buck, and that's that. You do your thing. Have at it. But yeah, I don't fuck with that guy anymore. And then this song with Karol G and the Colombian Avengers, I think I I think it was handled correctly. I think people showcased their concern. I mean, there probably was, but I don't feel like there was this widespread thing like cancel Karol G, or cancel Maluma or something like that. Cancel Karol G, cancel Maluma. As there shouldn't have been. But people voicing, hey, this maybe like doesn't help a cause that is a real problem that we're trying to like fight back against. You know, calling that out, and then the artist sort of saying, listen, even though we didn't intend it that way, I see your point. I think you're valid in your feelings, and you know what? Let's just change it so that we're not contributing potentially to this issue that is a real issue. And I think that's like fair accountability, and my respect goes out to everybody involved in this, for the organization sort of calling it out, to the artists involved, particularly Karol G. I thought that was big of her to come out and say, and I respect her statement, and that's that. And again, I think it's, you know, there probably needs to be slightly more, I don't know if communication or accountability, I think would be a better word, in terms of just trying to operate at higher frequencies as humanity, and much of that is entertainment. That's what we consume a lot of, you know, and I think if our entertainment can operate at a higher frequency, then it would only elevate us as human beings to be able to do so as well. So, yeah, I think a good moment there, if you will. And, you know, again, there's a lot to feel down about when it comes to the election. I loved that comprehensive list of Latinos being elected to office or reelected for some. You know, you got to take the wins where you can. And I saw Pete Buttigieg talk about this, and he talked about what he had in 2016 felt, and what he felt now, sort of what he reminded himself of was, in moments like this, you know, you fall back on the sort of down ballot, the local elections, the local representatives, and, you know, trying to make your immediate environment better and holding those people accountable as best you can. And, you know, I guess finding those little wins there. And I think that's what we did with the countdown there. And, you know, when you see people like AOC getting elected back into office, people who are really trying to do the work, I think there's you could rally around that a little bit here and say, hey, listen, like, we lost the House, the Senate, and the president, but it's a tough pill to swallow. But at least we know there are still good people out there who look like you and I, come from our backgrounds, and who are still fighting on our behalf. So I guess that's how I'm trying to frame this as well, for my own mindset, and hopefully that helps you as well. With that said, have an amazing weekend. We need amazing weekends now more than ever. Have an amazing weekend. I will catch y'all on Tuesday with a brand new episode. Till then, stay safe, and we will talk soon. Peace.